In the weeks leading up to Gen Con 2024, the publisher of the board game Call of Cthulhu Horror on the Orient Express asked me if I was going to be at a convention because they were going to have a prototype of the game there, and if I wanted to take a look at it and make an early video, then I could walk away with it, which seems like an interesting thing. I was curious about the game, so that's what I did. On Saturday of Gen Con, I picked up the game, I brought it home, and then I set it up, learned it, and played it. Now, very often, or somewhat often, I make video reviews of upcoming games, and so I just play the game based on the prototype, and then I give you like a regular review. Just because the game is not out yet doesn't mean I can't review it, but I can't review this one, so this video is not gonna be a video review, is gonna be an overview of my experience with the game. What do I mean? I mean that I was working on this prototype and I printed the rulebook that was available online, and from the materials received, I don't think I got a detailed enough idea of the game to be able to give it a proper review. Let alone that it's a prototype, so that it may still change before it reaches final production. It is just that from the materials provided, there are a lot of things that are unexplained. There were components mentioned in the rulebook that are not available here, including some important cards, including setup information. So I don't know exactly what the values or stats of some of the characters are. I kind of made them up. Some of the components, again, reference the rulebook, are not here. Some of the stuff that is here is underexplained. We couldn't really figure out the mechanics for unstable investigators, what happens exactly to sanity tokens. All this stuff is underexplained. And so, what did we do? Well, last night I met with 4 friends and we played it together. Some people have watched videos, some people have read the rulebook, and we kind of tried to make it work, but again, making judgment calls all the time. And so again, I'm not sure that we played the real game. So what am I going to do here? I'm going to tell you the experience of playing this game or trying to make it work from about 4 hours with a group of friends. So I'm going to tell you the general sense. I think I get a sense of that. And then our experience and ideas. We talked about the game quite a bit last night after that. So, cooperative game, technically also soloable, in which you will control 1 or more investigators, each with their own board, with unique actions that can be upgraded, with tokens representing sanity and insanity, with action tokens that you will place next to the actions when you activate them, and from time to time you will want to take a rest to reset your actions, to upgrade them, to gain stamina, and things like that. But we're on a train that is full of cultists, that is going through portals, so at least there are portals popping up and placing essence on the board. The train will move, and as it moves, we flip these tiles, opening more portals and generating more negative effects. There is a pool of these essence tokens. If the pool is ever empty, because they're all on the board, or they've been removed from the game by game effects, then you lose the game. So we're on the train, there are portals, there are monsters that are attacking us. They peek from that side of the train, they peek through the windows, and so maybe sometimes you want to close the curtains. There are monsters there. There is this weirdo here. There's a vampire that is hanging out from the edge of the train, like that, and attacking passengers inside the train. And he, for some reason, he's on the outside of the train, and he doesn't like when the windows are open. So it looks like the outside of the train is dark, and there is light coming from the inside, because it's a lot less powerful when the windows are open rather than closed. We got monsters, we got the vampire, we got people on the train, other passengers represented by dice indicating whether they're mad, freaked out, or insane, or having a good time, wonder, or unimpressed. They call it calm in the rulebook, but to me that's like hashtag unimpressed. We got passengers, we got suspects. These suspects have a square base. We'll talk about them more in detail. And then we have ourselves, our investigators. So, for example, here we have the chemistry professor who goes around making radioactive soup, basically. We have the passionate preacher. Looks like she's gonna hit somebody on the head with the Bible in case they don't listen. And so, and this is us. So there's a lot going on, and we're on the train, trying to protect the passengers from the monsters and the vampire, trying to limit the presence of the essence, trying to stay sane. If you go completely insane, you lose the game. And trying to figure out who the cultists are. There are some people in here, some of these suspects, and these are represented by those miniatures, some of these suspects who are cultists. At the beginning of the game, you will place these tokens here on each character card. And during the game, you will use conversation and possibly other game effects to flip them up, to look at them. Depending on the combination of tokens that have been placed there, and see different characters come with different combinations based on the display. Based on which tokens are there, that will reveal that this character might or may not be a cultist. A character, there should be a card for that. The product doesn't have one, but I found an illustration in the rulebook, so I hope that that is accurate. And so, a character is a cultist if he's going to Constantinople, has that evil cup, and does not have an elder sign, or yes. Or a character is a cultist if it has the evil fez. I don't know where it is right now. A character is also a cult. Oh, there it is. I found the evil blood fez. And that's just it. The character has that one. Boom, cultist. A character is also a cultist if they have any four purple tokens. So, if a character meets those conditions, they are cultists. If they don't, they are not a cultist. This person, for example, would not be a cultist. Boom. And so, that's the idea, that you're trying to figure out, to flip these tokens and use a little bit of logic to figure out who may or may not be a cultist. The only way to win the game is for the Chaga Chaga Choo Choo train to reach the end of the track. That means, of course, that you will have flipped all of these tiles face up as you go and resolved the nasty events that come with. The train has reached the end of the track, and at that point you are asked to identify all the cultists, to find all the correct cultists and not to accuse any non-cultists. If you do all that, you win the game. We played the game last night, and what happened, we pretty much figured out the cultists. Maybe in the first half of the game, the train was maybe here. And we knew exactly who was a cultist and who was not, but at that point we had still to survive until the ride, so the game switched entirely, no conversations anymore, not talking to the characters, just killing monsters and trying to remove essence until we could actually make our accusations there. There's a lot going on. I haven't even started really giving you a full sense of all that there is. The main action, again, takes place on the train, and here in front of the train, where we mark the position of the train. But there are a lot of other subsystems around here. There is a board here for incantations, and those are just negative effects. They will place tokens there, make the effects here more powerful, and you will interact with that. We have the spell board. You will remove these tokens from here. You will draw spell cards that then can be used by the players by spending sanity, and those would be the spell cards. You have cards that represent the player, the suspect's desires. There will be a game effect that places one of these cards under a suspect side like that, and if you fulfill their desire, so this suspect wants to be in a car with at least 5 passengers, if you fulfill that, then you flip the card face up. And you also flip all of the tokens, so that reveals if the character is a cultist or not. And then you will have different effects. If you fulfilled the desire of a cultist, that's bad. If you fulfill the desire of a non-cultist, that is good. Then we have a deck of paragraph cards. There will be effects that will cause these to be flipped. You look at the other side, see they're numbered depending on different paragraphs, and you'll resolve the effect on the other side. We're not done yet with the effects. Again, items that the characters may be having, and you can talk about these items. So, for example, I can be in the room with Maria, and I want to talk about the talking parrot. Then I'll use a game effect to do so. I'll flip the tile to indicate that I talked about the talking parrot, and I look for the corresponding card, and I read what's on the other side, resolving this charming conversation with Maria about the talking parrot. We have a deck of artifacts that'll be collected. We have a board to represent the actions of the vampire, and they will be less powerful or more deadly if the windows are closed in the car where the vampire is acting, and less deadly. So, for example, right now, if we were to activate the vampire will take a freaked out, would want a freaked out person in a car with closed windows, or would kill a unimpressed person in a car with closed windows, but no effect on unimpressed people in a car with open window. And then we have the event board. The event board, you will draw event tiles from this bag, and different kind of things will happen. Sometimes it's an immediate effect, so you resolve it. Sometimes the train moves extra, so you move the train, and then you discard this one, and then you draw more. And the same here, resolve the effects and draw more. Or you take a tile of this kind with the black edge, and you place it on the board, and for now it doesn't do anything just yet. And it may even be that you have a stack like that. But when there are 3 different tiles here, then you resolve 3 events. In this case, resolve this one, and this one. You resolve the events of the board. So the events, negative effects don't happen every turn. They just happen from time to time. So, that's the general idea. I know. And more in detail you're asking, okay, but why, what the heck do I do? Well, when it is your turn, players will alternate taking turns. When it is your turn, you will take a main action, meaning you take one of these, the leftmost, and you place it on the tile corresponding to the action you want to take. Resolve as much of the text as possible. You can also take 2 basic actions, up to 2 per turn. Each basic action will cost a stamina, and you'll do what it says, and so you can have a little bit of flexibility. Basic actions will be to move, to use an artifact, to open or close the curtains of a car, to use a car action. Some cars will have intrinsic actions placed, there it is, placed on them at the beginning of the game. Interact with a suspect, which is when you can talk to them, talk about stuff that's important to them, fulfill their requests, or push them off the train if you think they're a cultist. You can cast a spell or banish a monster. Again, that we need to remember, take care of those monsters, those creeps that are just peeking from behind there. And other actions are pretty much, again, move around, manipulate the feelings of the passengers, try to calm them down so they don't become insane, move them around so the monsters don't eat them too much. So moving, fighting, collecting resources, interacting with the suspects to figure out if they're cultists, or asking for favors, interacting with the other passengers, manipulating their feels, and the all-important action of talking. Remember, talking. which is how we get to flip these tiles here. We got a bag which I named the convo bag, and the action of talking will have a number. For example, if I take this action, I can talk to with a passenger of this type. There aren't any in my car, I can't take the action. Talk to, the number means I draw the number of tiles from the bag. And then I decide if I want to put them back in the bag or not. The rules are not super clear. We played it that what happens is that the ones that you draw and you don't put back, they stay there in front of you and you can use them for the next phase. And then you keep drawing one tile at a time until you decide to stop. So some of these tiles, as you can see, will correspond to some of this kind of symbols. So eye for an eye, a ticket for a ticket. And the second class means somebody in the second class of the train. Some of these tokens, however, will have negative effects. They are vertical tokens with a red symbol. Some have positive effects, vertical token with a green background. But for now, nothing happens yet. I'm going to draw a couple of more. I remember I can stop drawing whenever I want. And suppose that I do decide to draw one more, and this, and then I decide to stop. If I stop, the conversation is considered to be successful, so I get to gain the advantage indicated on the green tokens. I ignore the negative effects, and I get to flip a token from a suspect for each pair that I have one of, a token of that kind. Since I have two tickets, I can look at a ticket. Since I have two eyes, I can look at an eye. Since I only have one desire and one second class ticket, then these tokens don't do anything. That is, the conversation is successful. The conversation, however, you went too far if, as you were drawing, you draw three of a kind, like in this case I have three tickets, then you only get to flip one token of the type that caused the conversation to fail, and you ignore the good effects and you must apply the negative effects. This is not even a general idea, I guess. It is a very, very, very general idea of the main concepts of the game, but trust me, you will need to grok a lot more to play the game. Even if, I think, even when the game is fully produced and the rule book and the components match. But this is pretty much what I got, or the main ideas that I got from the game. So again, we played the game once, but for 4 hours, but we don't know how close this is going to be to the final product. So it was kind of pointless for me to keep playing it when, again, in any case, go deeper in a design that may not even resemble the final one all that much. To some extent, of course, but things may change, and again, things were unclear and underexplained as things stand right now. The rulebook really needs some love there. What we got? Part of the game, I would say the core element of the game is pretty fun. The parts in which we are moving and manipulating passengers so they don't go insane and they don't get eaten, and maybe they form certain combinations that will allow us to trigger certain effects. That was super good. The fact when we're fighting the monsters, pretty satisfying. When we try not to have too much essence on the board, and that pandemic feel, or trying to remove negative stuff from the board for the sake of you don't need too much, you don't want too much of that on the board or you will lose. And the thing that everybody liked the most, no doubt, what we all liked, which is why I spent some extra time telling you about, is the push your luck game of the conversations, where it's a push your luck, but then you also add these extra elements. Like for this character, we really want a token of a certain kind because we really want to know about that token that will tell us if the person is a cultist. So it may be worth pushing your luck a little bit more rather than less. It's push your luck with more elements that play into the decision that make it a lot more interesting and very satisfying when it happens. And and laughter and fake accusations when somebody fails. You know, we recommend, hey, Eduardo, keep going, it's the greatest idea, we really need that. Then Eduardo pulls the wrong token and everybody, Eduardo, why did you do that? That's crazy, like, why did you insist on going? This kind of friendly banter, friendly interaction. There's no doubt that was the part that we enjoyed the most. The core idea, frankly, reminded me a little bit of Pandemic Cthulhu, which I'm not saying is a negative at all, but the idea of like you're trying to manage a situation while monsters are attacking you, but with this extra element of deduction and push your luck with the suspects. These things I liked, we liked very much. Everybody was like, this is like really fun, this part. But again, even trying not to take into account the underexplained elements that hopefully will be addressed before the game is out, it remains the fact that this is a heavy, complex game, and we did not feel that all the subsystems that you have to deal with are ultimately all the necessary. We didn't spend a lot of time trying to fulfill the desires of the suspects. Remember these cards here. Because you don't want to fulfill the desire of somebody who may be a cultist, and then you find a person who's not a cultist, but you don't have the right items, or you have so much other stuff to do that you're not going to do it. We didn't find that these really added much. The paragraphs, again, very situational. We didn't trigger a single one. I had to go through the rules to figure out what triggers them. And again, maybe we played it wrong, maybe something underexplained. But let me say, we were having a good time with the monsters and the passengers and the push your luck and the deduction without these. So ultimately, if these have a bigger role, I'm like, but do we need that? Different game system for the main monsters and for the vampire. It's hard for me to imagine that it couldn't be streamlined into the vampire, making the vampire work more similar to the general monsters rather than having its own board and its own set of rules. The spells and the rituals, again, I almost felt like it's negative stuff. But do we need more different types for the rituals, different negative effects? For the spells, again, it's a whole procedure. I just wonder if the spells couldn't be just extra artifacts. Instead of having the whole other board, you draw a card and it says a spell and spend a sanity to draw the spell one time use. I felt that some of these subsystems I felt and my friends also felt that some of these subsystems did not really add much to the general core that was pretty strong. Now there's also an element of logistics. This game takes a lot of space to play. And although it is marketed and potentially is for solo play, I was planning to play it solo, and then I thought, I'm not gonna. There's just so much stuff scattered all around that really you need multiple people. You need multiple people, one player, just looking at all the little tiny icons on how the monsters behave when you activate them, all the boards with this and with that. It's just all the work that it makes more sense to me to split them on multiple people. Another thing, let me move this camera here real quick, and I just destroyed the train. It may be banal, but it does affect gameplay, which is, of course, the players sitting on that side of the train are not going to see the effects, so they took a picture, so they knew what the effects were. And they're not going to see what happens on this side of the train very well. They have to kind of, look over a little bit. And we placed the monsters on the other side where we sit on this side, we wouldn't be able to see them, and those players were where they were seeing them. And so basically the players sitting on that side of the table, the players sitting on that side of the table were managing the monsters, the two players on this side of the table managing the events and the artifacts, those two players managing those boards there, and then the two players sitting on this side, they had the best view of the train here, and especially of the train there. So it's not just that it is big and takes a lot of real estate, is that And maybe that's the idea. It's a party game when no one has a full, real understanding of what's going on. I had to trust my players sitting on the other side, that they really know how the monsters operate as they operate them. And I had to trust somebody on the other side of the table, etc., etc., etc. That also means, however, another great thing is that these boards, as you have seen, they have a lot of actions, a lot of individual actions, okay? That change also during the game, but that also means that you're not going to be able to have a lot of coordination. In Pandemic, everybody has a lot of similar rules with some unique abilities, and part of the fun there is the interaction among the players. Hey, if you do this, you do that, etc., etc., etc. Here you're not going to land a lot of suggestions. You're not going to be able to give a lot of advice or coordinate much, because I don't know the 8 actions that you have in your board, which are different from those other 8 actions. And next turn there may be a difference because you add new actions, so you upgraded the previous ones, because again, you gain new actions and you upgrade the previous ones with tiles. So we found this weird tension almost with a game that feels a little bit like solo, because you're mainly planning on your board that other people don't know, and say, hey, I can do this, I can do that. But you do need that coordination. So it's weird that there are aspects that seem going more toward the soul and more toward the multiplayer experience. One last thing, again, the conversation part was the best part that we all enjoyed, but the game also felt fractured and like in 2 halves, because we were able to solve that fairly easily, and then the game switched, and the things that we liked the most, the conversations, were not important anymore, and then just became a game about fighting and protecting the passengers. And toward the end, in the last maybe half hour, 40 minutes, there were some actions that we just didn't use anymore. So the game became a little more narrower in terms of agency rather than more exciting toward the end. So I have a little bit of mixed feelings, which may be due to the not fully cooked nature of the prototype that I was given and of the rulebook that I've used. But in general, I think there is promise. I think this game could be fantastic if it was streamlined and some of those subsystems were maybe distilled into fewer subsystems. And I would like... I don't know, the game to be simplified, because there's a lot of good stuff going on. There was a core engine that we really enjoyed, but then there are also a couple of negatives that were preventing us from enjoying it even more.